So hi again. I'm Annette Mendez. I didn't hit record before. Full disclosure for everyone. I'm the training and curriculum manager here at Good Grief. We're joined with Evelyn Moon, who is our content and strategy manager. So it's director, actually. She's not a manager. So like I said, prior today's session is really part of our Good Grief community webinar series. Like we bring to you every school year, we bring to you content experts, anyone within and outside the world of grief, so that we can continue the work that we do outside of our centers and really bring it into a virtual space where we can reach everyone. Anyone who is attending today's live session, you are going to receive a certificate of attendance within the next 48 hours. As always, we always like to start from a place of gratitude, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to spend some time with you today. I'm very grateful for our presenter, Meghan Reese. I'm super excited for this topic. Grief is something that we encounter in our lives, and it's the something that we rarely talk about, but also that toxic positivity where everybody wants to come to us and say, don't worry, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And Meghan does such a good job at really bringing that out and giving us a safe space for us to be able to say, yeah, I don't want to smile today, and that's okay. But before we delve into that, for those of you who are new to Good Grief, we are a nonprofit organization that's been around in New Jersey since about 2004. Our mission is to build resilience in children, strengthen families, and really empower communities to grow from loss and adversity. For most of our organization's history, we've been providing free and unlimited peer support programs to grieving children and their families. We start at 3 years old and we go all the way through young adulthood. And we do this in two of our centers. One is in Morristown, where I'm usually sitting in, and the other is in Princeton, where Evelyn is usually sitting in. In recent years, our work has really grown through education and through advocacy, and we're able to provide training and resources not only to those that come to our centers, but to schools, to hospitals, the healthcare industry, the funeral industry, corporations, and really other spaces where we can empower parents, professionals, and the broader community to support the needs of children facing loss and adversity, as well as their families. So this is a big picture of what we do. We offer family support services. We go into schools and make sure they're being more trauma informed. We just had our Spring Institute that was an amazing success. We also provide professional development and training, parent caregiver education, and community webinar series just like this. We also would love to give a huge thanks to the Lennar Foundation. We're very grateful for them and their generous support, which really allows us to offer these community webinars free of charge. So thanks to donors like them, we can continue to provide these valuable resources to our community and beyond. And if you or an organization that you know would like to learn more about sponsorships and getting a shout out, please email us and let us know. And with that, I'm going to do a very quick intro to Meghan because I would like for her to do her own intro. Our presenter today is Meghan Reese, and here she is. Meghan, I actually have been communicating with Meghan back and forth on social media because the things that she posts are not only sometimes very, very funny, but they always hit home. And every time I open my social media, I'm like, I need to talk to this lady. And then once we met, I knew she surpassed my expectations, and you are in for quite a treat. So I'm going to stop sharing and allow Meghan to introduce herself. They are all yours.
Yay. Welcome to Grief Webinars, where everything's a little messy, and it's my favorite part of doing the webinars because I was like, when do I share my screen and show my face? That's the element of surprise for timing, right? I'm like, and here I am. I'm really so grateful to be here today. And I know Annette found me on social media, and I was like, like when people reach out, you get that, okay, where could this go? And I am absolutely delighted. I think we connected immediately because the idea of people searching for more information and real thoughts about grief and real experiences is something that I value more than anything. Is just having those moments of real grief. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. And I'm gonna do it real quick. All right, how we doing? Okay. All right. Well, welcome. So toxic positivity and grief. This is why we're here today. It's something that I learned in my grief journey, and the feelings kind of associated with losing someone that you love and all the things that surround that. It's not just the loss, it's how we're treated and how we talk to ourselves and how impactful that is on our grief process. And you may notice that I will almost always say grief process or journey. I won't say healing process. And know that I have a very realistic view of grief and really being mindful that it's a very, very personal experience. Hi. So this is me. Just to introduce myself, my name is Meghan Reese. I am a full-time master's student in clinical mental health counseling, graduating in May, like this May. So it's on the horizon, you guys, and I'm on my way and so happy.
Congratulations for that. That's
Thank you.
awesome. I just had to chime in real quick.
No,
Congratulations.
please come in anytime, especially if it's a yay. I was in the nonprofit industry for over a decade, and I had my own grief experience and decided that I wanted to shake it up in a good way and do something that was really meaningful to me. I've always wanted to be a writer and share my experiences with others. And sometimes that doesn't always come from a joyful place, but it does come from a place of really authenticity for me. I'm very passionate about grief and trauma, and that is the work that I do in my counseling work. I'm also passionate about advocacy around end of life options. So these are the things that I kind of do on the side. I have a wife and two young boys. In my free time, I love to write. I binge shows. I love anything creative. And honestly, especially through my grief process, I love to do absolutely nothing. And I love when people ask, like, what are your hobbies? I'm like, nothing. Like, that is the best hobby for me in grief is to really just take space to do nothing. I have some contact information here for me. It'll be at the end as well. I'm happy to share the PDF with live links, and I know that the recording will be shared as well. Again, I got my start through writing a HuffPost article. It was always my bucket list before grief to write and have an article published and to write a book. And I started with a HuffPost article about my mom's journey. And that really kind of got started on Instagram. And it was really this organic growth that happened. So there's some links if you want to join me on my Instagram. If you'd like to read that article for more context about me and my journey, feel free. So today, why we are here. This is my mama. And every single time I talk about grief and every time someone asks me anything, pretty much every day, find a way to mention my mama because she is the reason that we're here. She's the reason that I can get up, quite honestly, because of the strength that she had in her life and at the end of her life. So I can see in the chat when you were asking like where people are from and all of that information, I could see the variety that I thought may happen in this audience, which I'm really pleased with because I saw some people that may be in the profession that are social workers, saw some counselors. They may or may not be grievers themselves, but this is really what my heart space was hoping for and coming into this of why we're here. So it could be honoring your own grief, right? People are here to seek validation, to know that you're not alone. And even though the experiences are different, grief creates this void. And just knowing that someone else might feel that void sometimes just gets us through the day. You may want to learn how to support others in their grief. Again, find validation and community, gain some tools and healthy habits, access grief resources, and really help navigate grief in your profession. What I want to do first, and I'll have Evelyn and Annette really help me with this part too, is I would like to utilize the chat. I'm very interactive when I do these webinars because I want to make sure that you guys all feel heard, even if it's just in a chat, and we'll have some other time to have some conversations as well. But I wanted to take a moment and acknowledge why we are here. And we are here because grief has affected us in some way. And I want to make sure that we take a moment to honor our loved ones. So I walked it through. opening the chat and you and walking through directions for how to do the chat because I know it's always like partially like walking through people. And if I need to do anything on my end to like shrink my screen, let me know. But if you guys could all take a moment, if you don't have a picture ready, that's okay. Just drop in the chat the name of your person and or a photo of them. Do I need to shrink my screen so we can see some of those chats? It's making a sense. Evelyn, can you see the chat if I have full screen?
I can. So
I
we've
can
got,
see the chat. I'm not sure how, if I can I share that?
I mean, I see names coming
Yeah,
in.
I see a lot. I see my dad, Fred, my grandmother's 23 anniversary, my grandfather, sorry, the
Okay.
anniversary
Oh,
of his
good.
death, passed away from brain cancer. Maria. We have my mom, Stephanie,
Okay.
Louise
Mhm.
Lee,
Mima. I love that name. Ours was Meme.
Florence and Bob Rogers, grandma and grandpa. We have Nikki. This
Aunt
is
Diane.
beautiful.
Okay.
Catalina, a daughter, my father, Leo, Grant
Okay.
Whitaker.
Friend Kathleen. My mom's name was Kathleen. I
We have
love this, you guys.
Jones, Joyce, Peyton, and Perseus, Myra and Bernie, Amar, my mom, Joan, my grandma, Mary, my older sister, Nicole, Denise Skeinberg. Did I say that correctly? I'm so sorry if I didn't. My brother, Clark, June McLaughlin, my parents, Mary Patton. We have Manning and Donna, grandma and mama. Oh my gosh, they're coming in so fast.
I love
If
it.
I
This is
missed anyone, I am so sorry. I'm going to keep scrolling as we go on and acknowledge all of these, but there's so many coming in, even as I read. We have my wife, Vanessa, Angela Mason, Jesse Hicks, Michelle, Carolyn, Brenda, Tope, Mary Charles, Pasha, and Prissy. We have my Aunt Diane. We have grandmothers Rita and Violet, aunts Denise, Wendy, and Joanne, and friends Joelle, Jimmy, and Phil. And they're still coming.
they're still coming.
Yeah.
I appreciate this. I also see some hospice social workers, so just acknowledging the patients as well and those that we work with, that those are losses, very tough losses as well. Um, I always love to part of my grief work is having everybody lead with their people. There's not a lot of opportunity for us to write their name, to always say their name, and to keep them alive in that way. So thank you all for putting these names in the chat. And what I'd like to do, whatever this looks like for you, but I'd like to take about 20 seconds maybe for us all to pause and just take a quick moment of silence and to think about these people and the lives that they lived and how they impacted us, and what that means to us. So I want to just take 1 second and look at all of these names quietly, and then I'll prompt you guys when we come back. But we're just going to pause for a second and honor all of these people and the reason that we're here today. Okay, thank you all. We can come back to the space now. I think taking a little pause is important to me. And I appreciate you guys sharing your people with us. And know that I acknowledge that they're with us in some way, regardless of beliefs or anything. For me, they are part of us, around us, whatever you believe in. They're here and they're going to be joining this webinar with us. And I always like to start with acknowledging that. And there we go. Okay, so really the focus for today, and while we're here, is just acknowledging grief and its impact on us. So I have it broken down into a couple sections that I think is really helpful. And again, this is about toxic positivity and grief, but it's also just about our grieving process in general and what that looks like. And sometimes the box that grievers are put in, which maybe Annette can attest to and other people can attest to, is I'm not a box kind of girl. I don't like to put other people in boxes either. As your experience is your experience. I think there's some commonalities in grief. And again, I talk a lot about avoid, this hard to explain missing piece in grief, and that acknowledgement alone is very helpful in my experience. So today we're going to talk about understanding grief. We're going to define toxic positivity, the impact of toxic positivity on us grievers, recognizing what that looks like. We'll also do a quick reflection activity, implementing some healthy techniques and habits for today. I have a list of resources and then ways that you can contact me in the future as well. What I wanted to start with too is kind of understanding grief. Grief is not always about death. There's a lot of the grieving process that I see in my practice as well. I think today we're here more talking about grief in terms of death, but that does come with a lot more than just mourning someone that we've lost. So what is grief? So grief is the death of someone that we love on its most basic level when you hear about grief. Grief is also the internal process of losing someone and how that feels. And then mourning is external. And I like to just kind of talk about that difference and what that looks like for people. Grief is also the severing of a bond that we had with somebody. It's the loss of our identity related to that person, maybe the role that we had in their life. A lot of perhaps caregivers here, or those that are in a caregiving role in terms of their job, counselors, social workers, those in the grief space. And a reminder that grief is not a problem to solve. I think that's where why I'm in this space, is because I noticed early on in my grief that it was treated like a problem. Like, how do we have solutions? How do we fix it? And therein lies the problem. And that's where we get into a lot of isolation and people getting into moments where they don't feel like they can get out of bed. And that's kind of my standard for the grieving process. It also doesn't follow a timeline in my experience. I'd like to mention the commonly referenced stages of grief, because we've all seen these. We've all seen these, and I think that it is, from my clinical perspective, it's great to have a guide, right? It's great for clinicians to really, especially if they haven't experienced grief personally, which happens, right? And it doesn't mean that we can't serve others if we haven't experienced grief the same way. So maybe having those steps in a process is really helpful. I'll tell you how I feel about those, but these are the ones that are commonly referenced. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross kind of set the stage for these. It was denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and then David Kessler added the stage of meaning in grief. Now, some would say that I'm finding meaning in grief, right, by the work that I do and finding a purpose, and that is true. And I don't like to lead with that. I wouldn't say that it's like purpose or meaning, because I would trade every second of it to have my life back with my mom. So that's just like the caveat that I bring to this. But I do think there's something to be said in terms of having set stages, really, again, for clinicians and for people to just, hey, you might go through these experiences, not in order, and not all of them, and not all of the time. So it's really stages light for me. So here's a little video I made of how I feel about the stages and really what this has looked like for me. It's not neat. It's not a straight line. You hear people say grief is not linear, and it's not. And this has been my experience. Even going through my counseling journey and going through all of the education, the academia component, I'm still I was still under the impression, oh, I go through grief for the first year and then things start clearing up. It was my was my thought process and kind of what the culture was. Is the first year of grief, you get through the first, and then you start the healing process. Um, and not to put that in a negative light, but that was not my experience. And as I work more in the field, that is not the experience of most people. Um, and actually, for me, the second year was much harder. When when the world keeps spinning and reality kicks in, that's when it gets, at least to be most of the struggle for me. Another part of understanding grief, just because there are different types of grief, and I really do lean into these to some extent, both personally and as a clinician, because I think everyone that's here might attach to some of these differently, or maybe a couple more of them, is that we have anticipatory grief. And personally, this was part of my grief process that I did not really understand fully until after the fact, because my mom had cancer for 2 years before she passed, and knowing that that would happen. So this really begins before the loss occurs. Anybody with dementia, cancer, terminal illnesses, the anticipatory grief leading up to that, and then adding that to the actual loss of someone. Is a very hard part of the process, again, that I don't think is acknowledged as much in the moment, because we're really in survival mode when we're watching someone at the end stages of their life. Complicated grief, sometimes called prolonged grief, intense and long lasting. This is now in our DSM, which is our manual of mental health disorders. I will say how I feel about that is they have a 12-month window. Again, that 1 year of anything that is really persistent and someone does not have the ability to function after 12 months, that is considered complicated or prolonged grief. I think it's normal in the grief process to not have a timeline. And so to put any timeline at all in grief, although I respect the DSM for what it is, and I also respect that not that putting a disorder on a time frame in grief is not something that I find really useful, both as a person and a clinician. Disenfranchised grief. So this is grief that is not acknowledged or validated. This is often if we have complicated relationships with people, really just any grief that is really not recognized by society or as a whole. Cumulative grief is multiple losses. I think in the course of our life, people experience different types of losses and losses that are compounding on each other, and really being mindful that we grieve each loss separately, which also, again, changes the timeline of that. Traumatic grief is anything that's sudden, violent, again, a traumatic loss that's unexpected. Ambiguous loss is just really loss without closure, that you don't have time to say goodbye. I think a lot that happens a lot with traumatic grief as well. Then we have the secondary losses, which I think is really, really crucial because it kind of ties into the toxic positivity theme as well. And this is a loss of identity, our role, our routine, our support. It's everything else aside from just the loss of the human being. So all the other stuff that we live with for the rest of our life. And not to put that in a doomsday perspective, but these are losses that are not always led with. They're not always the first that people think about when we think in terms of losses. So let's define toxic positivity. For me, this is really that gut moment when you're in your grief and people mean well and they're trying to say things to you to make you feel better. And I don't know that there's a better, and I wish that there was something that somebody could have said along the way that would make me feel better. And again, I think the intention is there for people, and I recognize that people want to say something. And I think of my life before grief and the things that I said to people back then, and I had very well-meaning intentions, but I didn't know the actual feeling of grief and how that may be impacting someone. Um, so really defining toxic positivity is forcing a positive outlook on circumstances where it's not necessary. Not only that, it's very harmful. And I say that very definitively, as it is harmful. I've talked to a lot of people, especially after my article was released, and people would reach out to me and they'd be like, oh, but the silver lining is that you wrote an article and that you got the word out and the bright siding. And it really sent me back, really, for someone to even use a term like silver lining after my mom died. And I was about 6 months, I had lost her 6 months before I wrote that article. And it was really like cathartic for me. But when someone used the term silver lining, I had a real physical react. I was just, well, I was angry, to be frank, because it felt really hurtful and dismissive. And this is why we're here today. And this is why I talk so much about it and write about it, because I do find it to be very harmful. And whether the intention is there or not, it's not the intention really that matters. It's the delivery and how it's perceived by those that are receiving it. So it's minimizing or diminishing grief by insisting that someone take a bright side, a positive, a light-hearted look on something, instead of just listening and leaning in to someone's pain. My Instagram and like kind of my tagline, I guess, is glitter-free grief. I don't want to sprinkle, well, I'm going to just say this out loud. I don't want glitter on my shit. That's that's really what it is. I hope I can swear on here. That'll be my one swear word today, I promise y'all. But that's what it is that there is this darkness, and putting glitter on it does not make it go away. It actually makes it worse. I think if we lean in a little to how it feels and support others and just that natural, raw hurt, that is more helpful than anything else. And I think it's teaching people that, and letting grievers know that that's really what it is. You got to lean into the pain, and it's the only way to survive and to make any steps and like not having it impact your day. It gets you out of bed in the morning, again, is my reference. So it encourages people to suppress those feelings instead of allowing them to process their grief in their own time. Really, it looks so different for everybody. And putting putting that toxicity and the bright siding on grief takes away from someone else's process. Like you're actively shaming them. Again, I'm very direct in the language, as it does create shame of like, gosh, I can't even grieve right. Like that's how it feels to be on the other side of it, is that we're already holding probably some guilt for things in grief, and we're already holding so many other emotions. So let's not add to them with things that are even more harmful. And don't mind me with my notes over here too, you guys, just so I keep us on track. So the impact of toxic positivity. So really what it does, it makes grievers feel like the loss needs to be corrected or fixed. Instead of understanding it, kind of like the stages, we're trying to put it in a box and saying, okay, this is how we fix the grief, and this is how you move forward with your life. I also don't like terms like move forward, because again, all of this is just telling people that they're doing it wrong or that they need to do it a certain way. So it implies pity over empathy. And I didn't put it on here, but for anybody that's seen Brene Brown's empathy video, where you crawl into the hole with someone instead of like peeping down at them and be like, you okay in there? No, it's like going down in the hole with them and just sitting there. You don't have to say anything and you don't have to do anything, but that is empathy. We're not looking at someone and judging them or be like, oh, I really hate that for them. Like, it's just like, gosh, that's awful. And I'm going to sit beside you and see if you need anything. That's empathy. We don't have to experience it to really know it. But toxic positivity also sends a message that grief is inconvenient and unwelcome, and that it's we kind of want to shoo it away. That's the impression when we're bright siding. We're giving the impression that from someone who's not grieving or those who are trying to talk to us, we're giving the impression that it's kind of a waste of time. It's very dismissive and hurtful. So it invalidates the emotions of those who are grieving. It really prevents authentic support, because once people are hearing all this toxic positivity, they retreat, and then they stop going places. They stop getting out of the house. They stop seeking support because the support that they're getting is not what they need. And for me, that's the part where I'd like to step in and even do webinars like this, post things online, is just to make people stay present, and not, the further we retreat in grief, the more complicated that gets. And so we try to keep people in their grief, but in their grief a little bit forward, just so that they can receive support that they need and that they know they're not alone, because it does increase isolation. We already feel isolated. I could be in a room with 100 people who love me, and I still feel isolated, because it's just, again, it's that internal, I'm missing something. And all the people in the world, all the joy in the world does not replace that. It doesn't mean that I don't feel joy and that I don't appreciate all these people, but there's still something missing, and we get to hold space for that. It also delays healing. Again, I don't love healing as a term, but just I think of that as like progression. Like, how do we carry the grief lighter?
Uh-oh, tech
I
issues.
think we lost her. Hold on.
But I do think, as we wait for her to come back, I think her internet gave out. So Annette, if you want to, I'm guessing, Megan.
There we
This is
go.
my grief, you guys. It happens. So let me get my share screen back up. We'll get started. And I appreciate the kindness that I know you guys are thinking about me right now.
Yes. And I just want to say, everyone in the chat, I mean, they're so hanging on every word, that the minute you were gone, they were like, whoa, what happened? Where is she? So
Oh, they're
no,
paying
are,
attention.
we are a
Oh,
community, we are paying attention, and
okay.
we got it going on.
Okay. I love that. This is authentic, you guys. It's authentic to me. And so thanks for hanging on and noticing when I left. um, all right, impact of toxic positivity, back at it. So again, delays the healing process, that moving forward, carrying grief in a lighter way, and it reinforces shame. So there's often a lot of shame and guilt and grief already, like I mentioned. And so it's a reinforcement when we're talking about the toxic positivity. I know that people are going to have a lot of comments about this, because I think we all have that one thing in our head that somebody said to us early in our grief, where we're like, ugh, like, I can't believe they said that. These are a couple common ones of everything happens for a reason. Ugh, delete it from your vocabulary in any way, even not in grief. I find this to be, especially I have a lot of clients that will say this too. And yeah, I think it's harmful. Again, they wouldn't want you to be sad. At least you had time together. You're so strong. Time heals all wounds. You'll see them again. They're in a better place. I think I don't, my face doesn't really hide things well. So when people say these things to me, I'm like, like, I gasp, or like I have a real reaction to this, because I don't find it helpful at all. So here's, everyone will have their own way of speaking about it, but some of the ways that we can change this and switch it to supportive, for those of you who are on here are supporting people in grief, I think of the supportive terms that we can say if you want to say something. Again, sometimes it's giving someone a hug, holding their hand, sitting next to them, offering them a snack. I mean, these are things that are so easy to do and still very meaningful. But I can't imagine how hard this must be for you, and I'm here. So instead of happening, everything happens for a reason. It makes sense that you miss them. I know that you love them a lot. No amount of time would ever be enough. So I had my mom for 43 years, and people have reminded me of that. Well, at least she had a good mom, and at least she was with you for 43 years. I'm like, yeah, and she should have lived like 20 more and been here for my kid. Yeah, so it's dismissive and very hurtful because I don't have to hold gratitude all the time. I can be grateful and grieving, but I don't have to lead and I don't have to lean into that gratitude all the time. We don't have to hold gratitude alone. We can have joy and we can hold the gratitude, but we also have to hold the reality of it. It's that we just miss them. So you don't have to be strong right now. You're allowed to feel this. I wish someone had said that to me more often of just because it was, especially as a caregiver, for those of you who on here who were caregivers as well, it's like we hold it together. And I held it together and I did all the things until I absolutely didn't. And these types of phrases kind of reinforce that of like, I wasn't a good caregiver because they died. And like these are all kind of conversations that we have internally. And when we have these statements, it reinforces how we already feel on the inside sometimes. So grief changes over time, but your love and pains are still valid. So better to say it changes over time as opposed to time heals all wounds. That's another one, like everything happens for a reason, where I'm like, time doesn't heal all wounds. It just it doesn't. It changes. The wound is always there. Like this is a person that's no longer in our life. That won't go away. How we live in the world may change, but it's not going to go away. So I'm going to pause here for just a second. I can't see the chat, so if there's anything in there that we wanted to touch on real quick, we could, but if not, I'm going to go into an activity. How's that feeling?
I think that feels good,
Okay.
Megan. I mean, this chat is absolutely popping. Everyone is interacting with each other, but I do think we're in a good place for an activity.
Okay. A little something about me too is I can't read the chat and talk. So like I really want to read the chat, you guys, but what you'll get from me is some crossed eyes and some stuttering. So I won't be doing that because I can't read and do it. So I'm gonna play a little bit of music for you guys, just to get us into like a regulated state because I do a lot of somatics and body work with in my counseling practice. And so really to take a minute, we're going to take about 4 or 5 minutes. I think we have the time, maybe four, to do a quick reflection. You guys can do this in your head or you can write it. I am huge on writing, even for people who don't like to journal or write. I think what goes in must come out and the grief is in. And to the extent that we can try to get it out of our body in some ways, you don't have to respond to all of these prompts. What I'm hoping is that we can take 4 minutes to really write some of these things down. And then I'd like to open it up for a couple people to share. And again, we'll try to keep this in total of about 8 minutes so that we have time to finish up. But just wanted to give an opportunity for people to share. So let's take about 4 minutes. I'll watch the clock, read the prompts, and see what's most impactful to you. Or if there's something that comes up where you're like, ooh, somebody said this to me and it was toxic and I just want to say it out loud. We'll give people just like maybe under 30 seconds to really respond. So again, going to play a little calming music, have you guys do this exercise, and then we'll come out of it and we'll share. And I'm going to old school play it on my phone. And thumbs up if y'all can hear it.
Can't hear anything just yet.
No. That's okay. We'll be silent. All right. I hope that gave you guys just a couple minutes to write down some things, and keep writing if you want, but I think we'll open it up. Evelyn and Annette, maybe we'll take a couple hand raises. I can't see anybody else except the three of us. So if people want to raise hands, Evelyn, if you could help maybe, excuse me, 4 or 5 people to kind of share. You can also drop in the chat some of your responses so that other people can see them as well. How does that feel?
Sure. So I could promote a few people to panelists. I see a few hands going up.
Okay.
You said how many?
Maybe 4 or 5 people for now, and the rest can do in chat. That way we can hear from some people and also be mindful of the time.
Sure. Actually, Annette,
I
I'm
got
a
it.
liar, and you will have to promote them and then send them back.
Just kidding.
All right. We have Keith and Jody. I think I've given you permission. Are you guys
Hello.
able to? There we go.
Yeah, I'm here.
Right ahead.
Keith, you want to go first? Oh, okay, I'll go first. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I can hear you. Please.
I think one of the small ways that we like to honor my mom's memory is, and it started by accident, by getting a bad bunch of flowers at Walmart one day. And we take flower petals and we cover her grave for her birthday, for Mother's Day, the anniversary of our death. And for my birthday, I take some. So it's always a nice way to spend some time with her and just remind her how special she was to us. And it gives us some quiet time. So that's one thing I'd like to share.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I love that. That's beautiful.
Beautiful, Jody. Thank you for sharing that.
Keith, would you like to share?
Good morning, everyone. I was a little distracted here at work trying to listen. Can you give me a reminder of what we're doing here?
Sure. So what we're doing is just taking a moment to reflect on the questions, the prompts that Meghan has on the screen. So one is, what is something you wish someone had told you early in your grief? What is a small way you honor their memory? What part of grief feels misunderstood by others? When do you feel most supported or unsupported in your grief? And what is one helpful and one hurtful comment someone made during your grief that stuck with you? So just one of those. You don't have to answer all of them, obviously,
Okay,
but
well,
just one of those.
I don't know how this pertains to grieving, but where I'm from in Asbury Park, there's a lot of gun violence, and we are constantly losing young people to gun violence. And it's like really hard to say anything to anyone from losing them, especially to this senseless gun violence. It says, what part of your grief feels misunderstood by others? When I walk the streets with a t-shirt on stating ceasefire, or if I'm doing a documentary on stop killing, people don't understand the fact that I'm hurting, even if you're not my family. It's gone around all over the world, just this senseless gun violence. So I think I'm really misunderstood when I do step out there. And it kind of bothers me. I need more people to actually not be afraid and join me on this venture. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Keith. And I can surely relate to that. I was raised in Newark and we have a lot of the same issues. And I think as is in every urban environment. And it's so very true that when we wear those shirts honoring them, or when the teens wear the shirt honoring them, I think adults as a whole don't know what to say because I think they're hurting too. But I agree wholeheartedly with you. I see you and I absolutely understand why that can be very much misunderstood. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing.
And before we move on to
Thank you.
Danielle, I just wanted to acknowledge this chat. If you all have not taken a moment to scroll through this chat, there is so much in there, from honoring people with their favorite foods to, I thought this was very interesting. Jed, who shared that as a soldier who has lost many other soldiers, I think people always feel the need to say thank you for your service. And that does not work for military folks when they are sharing their grief. He recommended try, I do not know what you've been through, but I appreciate the sacrifice and the price you all have paid, because the thank you for your service, it can feel like a cop out. And sometimes that's unintentional. Many times we come into things with good intentions, but you have to think about your intentions versus the impact on a griever and how they might interpret that and internalize it, for sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Danielle, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of how grief can feel misunderstood, is how I feel like grief has evolved as I've gotten older. Like, I lost someone when I was 14 and now I'm 28. And I think sometimes grief hits a little bit harder now because you realize the loss of that person, like the loss of like nieces and nephews that I maybe would have had, or like my kids one day won't meet their aunt. And I think people struggle to understand that, especially adults who came into my life after the loss, who never met my sister. Like, I think really struggle with that because a lot of ways it makes them uncomfortable, and they never really fully understand when I might be upset or what might upset me. So I think in that ways grief can be misunderstood.
Danielle,
Thank
you get
you.
at the heart of it. And one, I'm so sorry that you're missing your sister. And you're right that as we get older, we understand a lot more about what it actually means for our future. I think about that with my kids too, of like, they're going to realize as they get older what they're missing out on, and how that is impactful. Thank you for sharing. All right. Thank you guys for sharing. I can't wait to read the chat after. So if we can copy that, like a long Word document on the whole chat, so
You
that I
got it. I was just saying that to Evelyn on the side. I'm like, this chat is just so amazing. I can't even speak to it, but please continue, Meg.
okay, good. Okay. So now we talk about implementing healthy techniques and habits. I like to preface this by saying this does not take grief away, but there is a way for us to sit differently, to really take care of ourselves. I think what you guys learned about me too, I don't like terms like healing and self-care. I mean, because sometimes they imply a lot of pressure to do things a certain way. So I like to be really careful about that language. So these are healthy habits and techniques that can really, for me, again, in the work that I do, it's helping to regulate our nervous system and taking care of ourselves. There's a lot of chronic pain that comes with grief. There's a lot more that comes with it, both in our body and our mind, in the world around us. It's a lot, and it impacts every single part of us. So these are just some things that I've found to be really helpful. And I put the best one first because I think this is something that people don't often talk about in grief. Boundaries. Boundaries are so important for grief. I had people that wanted to help us so much, and I can tell you that I was excessively overwhelmed to where I wanted to become a hermit because people were trying to help me or asking me the help that I needed. And I'm like, I don't know what I need my mom to be alive. Like that's really, I didn't know what else to say. It's just this overwhelming feeling. I appreciate the help and it's really lovely and could be kind of hurtful. So in thinking of boundaries, we can always say, I'm not ready to talk about that yet. I appreciate your support, but I need space. Um, Also, if there's a way someone can help you very directly, just to say that, hey, I'd like you to bring me food, like next week. You know, I always found food to be really helpful because it was comforting at the time. And then I didn't have to cook for my family. Thanks for inviting me, but I'm not going. I said that very often because I did not want to be in public spaces, and being around a lot of people was just overstimulating for me. Also, I can't do that right now. I think these are all statements where we're really protecting our grief and not adding to it with things that really might not be helpful. Mindfulness and meditation. And again, mindfulness is being present. Mindfulness is awareness, and meditation is the practice of cultivating mindfulness. Just for the difference, I think sometimes they get used interchangeably. So just sitting quietly and breathing. I don't know how many times I say that in my counseling practice too, of just intentionally breathing, because we get into that shallow, dysregulated breath, especially in grief. So focusing on our grief and our breath and our body is really helpful. Letting the mind wander to those thoughts that we don't really want to lean into, lean in, and then come back to our breath. One of my favorite meditation or breathing practices is exhale breathing. I wanted to put it on here again. You guys can look more into this, but it's really just breathing in for however many seconds and exhaling double. I do it in every single session with every client that I see because it's very regulating. The exhale being longer than the inhale gives your body a chance to regulate itself. And sometimes when those grief thoughts are coming up and that grief panic is really setting in, especially early in grief, just taking some deep breaths. Again, we're not getting rid of grief. We're sitting with it differently so that we can still function, because we're still going to the grocery store, raising kids, working, living, like all that is still happening at the same time that we're grieving. So we have to find some ways to at least get through that. Grief rituals, also one of my favorite things, is just taking time. I say just take time to be sad. And I say that because it's true. Just honoring your grief, carving out moments to really do that, especially if you're having to go back to work and live and do all of the things. Honoring your grief in a specific time is really helpful. You can light a candle, write a letter, cook their favorite food, but just gives you the opportunity to change that habit into something healthy that can really serve you differently. Also creating a space to mourn. A couple months after my mom died, I created a memorial wall for her, and it was probably one of my favorite things that I did, because I put pictures from her childhood, her birth certificate, like her being silly. She did a New York Times crossword puzzle for the first time, and she dated it. And so it's hanging on her wall because that was important to her. And so being able to go to that wall and talk to her and see her life, and that her life still matters and that she's still here, has really been helpful for me. And also making grief-free zones of, like, when you just do something and tell the grief to go away. That's kind of what I do. I'm like, not right now. Like, not right now. And I say it out loud, and my family thinks, I don't know what they think of me, but I'm like, not right now. They're like, what? Like, no, I was talking to my grief. Like, I don't need it here right now. So you can watch your favorite show, do art, go on a walk, really just be intentional about the self-care. Again, I don't love the self-care term, but it really is just taking care of yourself, honoring your grief, and honoring the life you have outside of grief still. I'm also big on journaling. Write it down. You don't have to have a journal. You don't have to have anything fancy. When it's 1 a.m. and I can't sleep, I go in the notes section on my phone and I just write all these thoughts down of, like, what am I feeling right now? It's usually a lot of swear words. It's not pretty. I really wouldn't want someone else to read it. And that's what I need to get out. It's whatever's in there comes out in whatever form that is for you. I also do audio when I'm driving. I just talk into like an audio app on my phone and say all the things that I want to say, and then make sure I don't accidentally share that with someone. Now we get to the resource section. I don't like that those links are blue because they're hard to see, you guys, but that was another one, one of those things that I like could not change. This is not an all-inclusive list, but this is really what's been helpful to me. And I have to say, I'm adding Good Grief here. And I didn't write it down because you are ubiquitous. You're here today and all over the place. And I forgot to put the link. So that's my real life. So here's some books that I've found helpful, some books that other grievers have shared with me, other counselors have shared with me, a couple of podcasts that have been really helpful if you're into the podcast. I made a note, I'm not paid to share any of this. I wanted to put that because I don't know, it just feels weird to to think that I have any kind of monetary gain for these are just resources that I have found helpful, and websites. Some of the websites offer counseling or coaching for free. Some is with a cost if you're doing like one-on-one. So a lot of different resources in here, and I kind of wanted to give like a good mix of everything. What I didn't add on here that I think will be helpful for the contacting me later is thinking of those who have children that are also grieving, which could be a whole separate webinar because I have two small kids, and my mom was like their third mom. So it's just been really a whole different ball game to grieve and then to watch your children grieve. But I have a list of books that I think have been really helpful for my kids and just an outlet for them to know they're not alone either. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me and I'm happy to share that as well. And here's how you reach me. And I think I almost made it in the time, you guys, and this is a big deal for me.
This was amazing, Megan. I'm at a loss for words, and Evelyn can attest to this that I'm never at a loss for words. I always have something to say. But this was so incredibly real and raw and helpful and relevant. And I feel like this is something, looking at the chat, just my own feelings, this is something that is so incredibly relevant. I think especially right now, we're in an era where everything is mindfulness and gratefulness, and sometimes our own stuff gets lost in the shuffle because we're not all rainbows and butterflies all the time, right? Sometimes stuff just sucks, and it's like, I don't want to hear that it's going to get better. I don't want to hear any of that. I just want you to give me some cheddar fries and sit and watch some mindless TV with me, right? Like that's it. And sometimes those little things, they get forgotten, and they're so incredibly helpful, just sitting with someone. You don't have to say anything, but just sitting with me is just amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for this. Evelyn has dropped in the chat, and I'm so thankful that Evelyn is here too. Because I don't know if I could have gotten through this specific webinar without her, because it was that good and I was that into it. She dropped into the chat our upcoming webinars. We have two amazing webinars that are coming up in April and in May. Again, for those of you that were here for the live session, you will receive a certificate of attendance, and everyone will receive Megan's contact information, the PDF that she's going to give us, as well as Good Grief's own survey, right, Evelyn? The survey is going to come again.
Yes, so the survey is currently in the chat along with links to April and May's upcoming webinars. We really do value your feedback. It helps us determine the direction for future sessions. So please, please, please fill it out. And your certificate's coming your way. We did have a question in the Q&A and one in the chat that I thought was good. So I don't know, Megan, if you have a moment just to look at
Have my
those.
time. I did not plan anything after this in case. Yeah, so I'm happy to stay and answer questions if you guys have the time.
Yeah.
And we'll have the time.
Yes, please.
My
So in
day
the
is
Q&A
clear.
we have, if there's no timeline for grieving, how can we categorize long-lasting grieving then? I think that's a great question.
That is a great question. I think for me personally, and for those I work with, the long-lasting grief, it's really growing around the grief and not thinking of it in terms of like the stages of it stops. It's really like, working around it, knowing that our life, and we're still functioning and acknowledging our grief, and it is a long-term process. And I think of it's there's no destination, there's no end. It's how are we honoring the people we lost and honoring ourselves because we matter still. And it is a long-term, it's a long-term process.
I agree. I agree. I always think of this image where the grief is like a ball and it's like we don't get over it and we like jump into it and it just becomes a part of who we are. I
Yes.
think that's something also that is very difficult for other people to honor and to understand. Like where's so and so? We want to bring her back, and you're like, no, this is who I am now, and
Mm.
this is me, and you have to learn to kind of deal with that as it goes.
Yes.
Evelyn, I
So
didn't see one
I
in the chat.
I saved it. So
Oh,
someone
perfect.
was looking at, some of those less empathic statements or, those at least. And someone asked, I've heard those statements from clients themselves, like, at least they lived a long life, like, at least I had them for this long, at least there wasn't suffering. Is that still supportive if I allow that narrative to continue?
Oh, what a great question.
Yeah,
That's so not funny, haha, but
yeah.
funny because I have talked about this as well. And actually great question. So I have some at leasts, right? And I think for the griever to have some of those at least or those statements is acceptable because that's our experience, right? Like at least in my mind, I got 2 years with my mom knowing that there was an end date. And for me
Mm.
personally, that helped my grief process to some extent. If someone else said that to me, I would not be okay with it, which I know
Mm.
sounds, like almost hypocritical in a way, but like that's where we lean into like personal grief experience. Like, this is what it means to me. This is how it makes me feel. I can think these things. That's part of my process, but I'm not diminishing my own grief and saying that.
Mm.
I'm just recognizing that there was a part of it that was helpful for me. I think I hear clients say that as well, and I just acknowledge that's theirs to hold, and then they can say
Mm.
anything they want about their own grief. It's just when we tell them that is when
Yeah.
we get into harm.
Megan, I had a very similar reaction when I read that. Like, I'm allowed, but other people can't tell me. And it's very
Yes.
much, going to what we do at Good Grief, we get a lot of questions about religion and things like that. And we very much train our facilitators of our grief peer support groups to not bring their own beliefs in. But, if you have a kid or a grieving parent or someone who comes in and they start talking about God or the comfort that they find in their religion, we're not going to be like, no, you can't. It's just
Right.
that we can't bring our stuff to
Yes.
them, and I think that they're very, very similar in that way.
Yeah. I
And I
think if
also
someone
feel like,
has a
we
strong
live in a
faith.
society that is constantly silver lining it, and sometimes we do it for ourselves, we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So I think it's very personal, like Megan, like you said, it's very personal. If you're with a client and you feel that that's helpful to them, then great. But if you're with a client and you feel like they're using that to not feel, that I think that's up to the clinician as well.
Mm. We
Yes,
have
learning to navigate that difference
Yeah,
is
it's hard.
critical.
Mhm. We have
Sorry.
another question, and this one's interesting because at Good Grief, we're very intentional with our language. We never say loved one because we have plenty of people that have come here experiencing the death of someone that maybe they didn't have a good relationship with. So
And
this feels like a very relevant question. It said, any advice you would give working with clients who are going through complicated/traumatic grief where the person they are grieving is someone they did not have a good relationship with?
yes. So I don't lead with this, but I had that with my father. I hadn't talked to him in 12 years. We did not have a healthy or good relationship, and did not have contact. And when he died, there was a grieving process that was very unexpected for me. I'm like, why am I grieving somebody that I don't like? And that was very harmful. And there is still a grieving process. I think that grieving process looks different. Honestly, my wife lost her mom as well, who was not a good parent figure. And there is loss in that, and it's not necessarily the loss of the person, it's the loss of who they should have been, who we needed them to be for us, and who we could have been if they were there for us. So it's a little bit of loss of ourself. So that complicated grief is just as hard as losing someone we love in different ways. And I think that is often not acknowledged. And if we had a 4-hour webinar, I wanted to put that in as well. Like that's something that not everybody loses someone that they have a great relationship with. And that is very complicated as well. And, further complicates the process. A lot of toxic positivity and that as well, but they were still your parent. I'm like, yeah, Annette, your reaction's mine. I'm like, oh, if I can roll my eyes and my body at the same time.
Yes, yes.
Like,
It's frustrating for sure.
yeah.
I can totally relate to that.
Yes, there's toxicity that gets put on that complicated process as well.
Yeah. And they almost make you feel bad for grieving. It's like, well, you didn't talk to them and you weren't their friend and you were, and you start thinking, okay, maybe I don't grieve. But your body and your brain, they just sometimes don't connect.
Yeah, I don't want to
Sometimes your body
gaslight
reacts.
myself because someone else feels like I should have a different process.
Evelyn, did you see any other questions that may have
No,
I
I
may
mean, I think that is everything. Just our wonderful, wonderful chat is continuing, but no more questions. So I think we're at a point where we can wrap up. I'm very grateful to the people who have hung in there for an extra 11 minutes, just engage with the Q&A. This has been truly a wonderful session. Thank you so much, Meghan.
Thank you, Megan. And I do hope that we'll have more collaborations in the future. This was absolutely amazing.
Call
You
me
did not
anytime.
disappoint, and I'm so happy that we were able to connect with you. And everyone that stayed, thank you so much. We want to be mindful of everyone's time.
Yeah.
Keep a lookout for Megan because you will see her again in collaboration with Good Grief. And thank you all for your time and being here with us, for your vulnerability. That chat was just, some people were like, yes, please send it to me too. You'll all get it. We're all.
Yes.
Okay,
We're all
good. You'll
gonna get it.
capture it for everybody.
I feel bad for people who are going to watch this on YouTube and they're going to be like, I want to be part of the chat. I
Well,
mean,
you know what? For those of you that are going to watch us in the future, we're from the past. But for those of you that are going to watch it, please start your own chat in the bottom part of
yeah,
YouTube.
in the comments.
Absolutely see that as well. So with that, thank you so much, Megan. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you all hopefully in our April webinar, which is going to be just as amazing.
Can
Bye,
you
everyone.
ladies stay on for 1 minute for me?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
just going to stop.
Okay.